In previous lessons, we've covered C# essentials and data types and a few things that are some of the nuts and bolts of getting started with C#. This in turn helps us get started with making ZeroTouch nodes for Dynamo in C#. In this lesson, we're going to go ahead and create a Hello World node. So in coding and programming, more often than not, you create a node that just says Hello World, and that's what we're going to do with ZeroTouch as well. Or not quite in Revit yet. That's okay, because we are going to actually be writing code in Visual Studio now. So if you don't already have it open, go ahead and open up your Visual Studio project that we created in the lesson 3 lessons ago. We'll navigate to it and I'll show you how to open it in this lesson, but getting it open will help out. Once again, that is attached to GitHub and we will be syncing our code to GitHub along the way. So let's go ahead and jump over to our Visual Studio project now. Alright, so here we are in Visual Studio, and in your recent files you should have ZeroTouch Unraveled or whatever you named it. If you named it different, it'll show it in the recent files. If it's not in the recent files, navigate to your Documents folder where you saved your repositories. Mine's Documents, Repos, ZeroTouch Unraveled. Whichever one yours might be, you're good to go. If you need to create a new project because you can't find yours, go ahead and navigate back to that previous lesson where we set up our project and we look at an overview of Visual Studio. That will help you kind of catch up in this lesson. I'll go ahead and click on ZeroTouch Unraveled and it opens up my first node.cs. That's a class, and within there we have all of our code that was already entered previously. We will kind of review this as we go through it, but let's go ahead and make a node. So once again, we have our Solution Explorer over on the right. This is like our project browser in Revit, and our properties over on the left. That's kind of how I like to have my UI set up. Yours might be different, but in that previous lesson, we did set it up in this way. We also have our Git changes for any of the changes we make to sync with GitHub, which we did in that lesson as well. In this case, we have my first node.cs. So what we'll go ahead and do is go on line 10 next to the curly brace and hit enter. Visual Studio is really cool because it has this concept called IntelliSense. IntelliSense allows you to input code very quickly by doing predictive things. So you'll see some text hovering as I'm typing. In this case, this isn't really going to help us. We'll go ahead and add it and I'll show you how to fix this later because it will make something additional inside of Dynamo. But yeah, we can go ahead and hit tab to accept that contribution from Visual Studio. Hitting enter again, we will see that it's giving us all sorts of predictions. So Visual Studio has IntelliSense and it has a lot of AI things as well. So it thinks we want to make a node with an integer that's an ID. This isn't what we want to do. Yours might even look different, but it is cool to keep an eye on. What we are going to do is type in public static string hello world. For all of our code in this series, within this course, we are going to be typing this in camel case, to where the first letter of each word is capitalized. There are two variants of this kind of style. One's called camel case and one's called Pascal case. Camel case, the first letter is also capitalized. Pascal case, the first letter is lowercase. So like if I were to type in hello world, that's technically something called Pascal case. They're both referred to as camel case all the time, so don't stress it too much. So we have public static string hello world. That's telling the compiler, Visual Studio, that we want to make a node that's publicly available, that's required for Dynamo. In order to see nodes in the library, it has to be public. Static, which means that you can use it multiple times, also a requirement for Dynamo. And we're telling it we're going to return a string. So public static lets it show in Dynamo, and string tells it what's going to return. This fourth portion is the name of the node that's going to show up in the browser in Dynamo. From here, we have to type in a parenthesis, and what this does is allows us to have variables for the node. So in Dynamo, you can leave this blank and have a node that has no input ports and only has an output port. We might do that as this first iteration of this node, and then you can kind of tell it what to return without any input. So you can see I am getting a suggestion that says tab to accept. I'm going to go ahead and do a close parenthesis just to ignore that and do curly braces. You will see that the compiler is being really smart and it's telling us that we have an error. The error that we have right now is because we're not returning anything. So not all code returns a value. In C#, in Visual Studio, these curly braces represent where all of our code's happening within C#. So all of the things that need to happen right here in this section. In my case, it is on line 14, and I'll go ahead and zoom in a bit so that way we can see this a little bit easier. Hovering on the red line, we will see that it's showing me potential fixes for this error. Another really awesome thing with Visual Studio is it guides you along the way to make your code compile, which is just awesome. If we click on show potential fixes, we will see replace hello world with a pop property, move, extract, all stuff that's not really going to help us in this case, but we do know that we want to return a string because that's kind of what we indicated right here where we said string. So if we type in return, and we'll do parenthesis, and we're going to say hello world. All of our lines of code in C# need to end with a semicolon. So you will see that I have a red squiggly error right there, and it's because I didn't tell the line that it needs to end. So that's another thing. If you're coming from Python-based code, we do need to end our lines with a semicolon. Fun fact, in Python, if you actually put a semicolon, it will still run within Dynamo. I'm pretty sure that holds true for Python in general, but in C#, if you don't put it, it won't run, so we have to add that semicolon. So there we have it. That is our first node already. That's pretty awesome. We are going to compile this and look at a few of the things we need to change in the code. But with that in mind, that is this lesson. We went ahead and typed out our first node. I know it doesn't feel like it's node yet, but it is a node. In the next lesson, we are going to compile that, import it into Dynamo, and look at a few of the things that we need to change to make the code clean and appear correctly in Dynamo. With that in mind, we will see you in the next lesson.